Take the red pill.
The real life, is this just fantasy? I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hey there, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
I'm Virstyne Henry.
And please check out our website at truthertalk.com. You can find our archive shows, our essays, our store. We air right here on UCY TV Sundays, 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Today we have, for this intro, our friend, our co-host, Sarah Sotomayor. So please welcome Sarah to our show. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
Nothing much.
Well, Sarah, you've been on our show several times, and you're, have you written anything in your blog lately?
No, not lately.
Okay.
Still working on health and everything.
Right. I know it's an ongoing battle, I know, because as we talk about all the time, you know, I have a vaccine-injured son, so your blog, sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com, where you talk about your injury from Gardasil vaccine, and we're doing a show on vaccines today, you know, nothing unusual for us.
Yeah.
We do quite a few shows on vaccination, and so you had a vaccine injury, I have a vaccine injury son. I kind of think, you know, it's, once you start getting into the rabbit hole and you start going down to what a vaccine is and what they really do to the body and stuff, you're kind of hard pressed to find a person that gets a vaccine that doesn't have some effect negative.
Exactly. Yeah. It just varies in degree of how severe it is. And then it's just a biological ticking time bomb. It can affect you more negatively and more severely later on in life or immediately after you have the vaccine.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know, sometimes they're obvious, like with what happened with you. I mean, what you know, I don't remember. Did you guys think it was obvious right away, or did you guys kind of figured it out later, didn't you?
Well, we knew it was the vaccine, but everybody kept saying it wasn't.
Right.
I got sick. I started having that severe pain in my right arm after the vaccine, and my mom kept bringing it up to our pediatrician or doctor, and she was like, "Oh no, that can't happen," you know, just totally denying it. And it wasn't until maybe at least a year later when we went to another specialist, and he said, and we were asking if I should be get all my vaccines in, and he's like, "Oh no, I wouldn't do that." And we brought up the Gardasil. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's like about 5% of girls who are having seriously adverse reactions," and that was the first time it was confirmed for us.
I see. Yeah, it was kind of like with Aiden. You know, they told me it wasn't it, and you know, but I said, "Oh, is it the vaccine?" And no, it's not. It's not. That's not what it is. She said, I remember her saying something to the effect of, "Yeah, that's just too easy of an answer." We're like, well, maybe if it's easy, then it's correct. Why does easy necessarily make it wrong, you know?
Yeah, it's like, keep it simple, stupid. It's right in front of you.
Yeah.
It's so obvious of an answer that it can't possibly be true. That's kind of what I felt like she was saying. You know, it was weird.
Yeah.
But
well, it's funny too, because I remember when I had asthma and I found out, you know, as I got older what that meant, and then doctors would be like, "Well, we don't know what causes asthma." Well, yeah, you don't know because you're not looking at vaccines. Now I know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
right.
just.
It's like all you have to do is look at the ingredients, and then you look at the side effects, and it's really not that much of a leap to figure out that you're going to become anti-vaccine and realize that all vaccines are poison. It's just neurotoxic chemicals with some tumors, some monkey testicles, some aborted fetal tissue that somebody in a white lab coat is telling you that's safe and that will protect you. I would choose measles over this. I did have I did have warts, like, on my pinky, and I got them frozen off the day I got the vaccine, so I had already had HPV. So, it's just so stupid. It's like, it's just a fucking wart. Like, you're not going to die. It's just unbelievable how they spin what people who are against vaccines, what they say, and how they spin the science. And you can't tell anybody who's pro-vax anything, and you can't point out the contradiction in their argument because they always bring up herd immunity. And you're like, well, aren't you supposed to be protected if you're already vaccinated? Why would it matter if there are people who aren't vaccinated? And they can't answer that, so they just say, oh, well, you're attacking me. And, that's all they really have.
Right, and herd immunity, it's a theory, and just like vaccination is a theory, So when people say they understand the science behind herd immunity or the science behind, you understand the theory.
Yeah, well, they obviously don't understand that theory is in fact. That's the thing.
Exactly, theory is not fact. And that you cannot prove a negative, so they can't say, well, we don't know what causes something, but then we know it's not vaccination. You can't say, well, we don't know asthma is, we don't know what causes asthma, but we know that vaccines don't cause asthma. Well, really? Then you don't know that because you're unable to prove negative. So, speaking of this propaganda, this measles thing is kind of out of control these days. I just came across this, just a few minutes ago. There's a petition, to petition the White House, classify refusal to vaccinate children as a mental disorder. I think this is real. I think that somebody actually really did this, and it has over 2,000 signatures already.
Wow.
So, yeah, why do you suppose everybody's just so in their slumber? Because
I'm sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Well, April and I have joked about it. Maybe it's because they are vaccine injured themselves, but then that's not really fair to say because that's kind of the same thing they're doing to us, right? Saying that we are mentally disturbed or mentally fucked up. But I think honestly, it's probably one of the biggest hoaxes on the planet Earth in our lifetime. Sure. Because they've sold this idea to not only people in America, but to people from all around the world. But I also think because people all around the world are starting to wake up to this, that once they see the cracks in this, they're going to start questioning a lot of stuff. And in addition to that, if people are kept sick, they can't think straight or they're preoccupied dealing with their illness. So once people realize that vaccines are a problem, they're going to stop vaccinating. They're going to become healthier. They're going to find out that they were intentionally poisoned. It's going to be game over. So, I'm a little scared, and there's a part of me that's a little excited because I think when there are people that are actually starting to look at this information, I think it's coming a time where people are really going to have to pick sides. And I think that they're becoming so ludicrous that they're starting to expose themselves.
I agree. It's just that there's no middle ground with this argument. You're either right or you're wrong. This is black and white. And what you said about, people kind of being vaccine injured themselves, I think, people are just so inculcated and brainwashed that they just can't see past their programming unless they're willing. You can't force somebody to, think differently. So it's just upsetting because they're going to have to come to it on their own. But we really need a lot of numbers to really get this to shift. And honestly, I would love for there to be no vaccines on the planet because people who shed vaccines actually make people sick, not the other way around. Yeah. But I would allow somebody to have the right to vaccinate themselves just as long as I have the choice and the right to not vaccinate and, have other people to have that choice as well.
Right.
And that's all that you see, people who are, quote, anti-vaxxers. We're fighting for everybody's choice, not just our own. And you don't see anti-vaxxers trying to force people to become anti-vaccine. You only see that from the pro-vaccine side. Yeah, we're trying to give people freedom of choice. And that's a big difference. And if people can't see the logic in that, then it makes me feel that they're just completely lost. And, like a hopeless case of ever, waking up to the issue.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. We live in interesting times, that's for sure. But it's ramping up because of this supposed measles outbreak. But
that nobody has died from.
The
Mickey Mouse started. It's all because of Mickey Mouse. Whatever.
Right. The Mickey Mouse. But the thing is that there's no. The numbers of all these other diseases, these new medical illnesses that are astronomical. All these things that are, potentially linked to vaccines, or in fact are, like autism, like I know is, and Sarah, that you were vaccine injured, and how many other, and Virstyne, you're suspect of it. And so here we are, 3 people talking, and every single one of us has experience, either personally. I don't know if I was, because I don't have any major health problems like that, but, who's to say that I'm not, when I experience some issues with thyroid or some fatigue or whatever, that it's just a milder form, because I didn't have that many vaccines. Thank God. When I was a kid, my mom, when I transferred schools, they had tried to vaccinate me again because they lost my records, and so they were like, "Oh, just get them again. Just go get them again." And I was so deadly afraid of needles that I begged my mom not to. And so, thank goodness, she told the school, "No, she's already had them. We're not going to do it again." And then they had to go back to the doctor and have them write a note, because nothing was in computers back then.
Right.
So, but I can't imagine. I would have been probably destroyed. But I just did it out of fear of needles. I was just a kid. I had no idea.
Thank God, right?
But it's almost like your instinctual reaction is correct.
Exactly. You see all kids scream and cry and try to hold on to their moms. I remember being 4 or 5 and going in for shots, and I didn't know it, and I heard this kid just screaming and come out looking just utterly destroyed, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. And then
your gut instinct,
Mom, you gotta help me.
Yeah, your gut
so
instinct.
you don't see kids and the other thing is if vaccines are so great, why do they have to be mandatory? If they were so great, wouldn't people be lining up and asking for more? That's not happening. Get real.
It's true, And you read this guy's blog, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
You read the Paul Offit letter that we're going to have on our show next, Matt Jonker. And his stuff is really, really well written. What did you think of them? Which ones have you read? You read the Paul Offit one, I know.
I read the Paul Offit one, and I think I read the first one where he talks about becoming anti-vaccine after his second child. And I just love how he writes. He manages to fit in humor, and it's brilliant, and he just nails everything. It's perfect. I love his stuff.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I really enjoyed both those articles that you mentioned. I think the 15 points is the one that's gone really viral, and it's the things that he talks about, I think we touch on all the time. It's once you go down the rabbit hole, you realize what's in a vaccine. You never knew that before, and it's all these bizarre things, as you mentioned, Sarah, the aerosol, aluminum, formaldehyde.
Now they're using tumors. Now they're using tumor cells, Yeah,
they're going to be using cancerous tumors. Genetically engineered, recombinant DNA,
I didn't even know this. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll send you the article. It's crazy.
Please. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's just absurd, and they, just on and on and on, the list of ingredients. So right there, that's a red flag. That's something has got to be not well. Plus, they're injecting it into you, which is not a natural way to develop immunity, because we wouldn't normally come into contact with disease that way. We'd come into contact with it because it would come into our mouth or through our eyes or through our skin or through, somewhere else in our body, our ears, et cetera, not through an injection.
Exactly.
So who's to say that could even possibly go through the passageway of the immune system to trigger a response? And just because you have an antibody, well, then you've also been injected with all of these toxins. So now you've just destroyed your immune system. So good luck with that.
Right.
It's just crazy. But, we're the anti-vaxxers. We have no science behind it. We're the ones with the mental disorder, et cetera, right?
Right.
It's so backwards world. Would you say it's getting to be pretty close to 1984? George Orwell's vision.
I just finished reading Brave New World, and I think we're in a Brave New World. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, everything's
GMO babies.
in science.
Yeah.
Science is God, and for a lot of people, and it's very it's disturbing. But I'm happy that I can see it. I'm happy that I'm not in it. I'm really grateful that I'm not like on the pro-vax side and trying to basically a zombie and.
You broke your programming.
Yeah.
But I mean, and just to tag into what Sarah shouted out, GMO babies. That sounds like science fiction. That's true.
Yeah, they made a GMO baby, everybody.
Yeah, there's GMO baby, and you can also there's like gender assignment. There's genetic. There's places even here in California where you can go in and have your baby assigned, attributes like blue eyes, and
if you want to be having children.
Right. There was an article not that long ago that I read about this couple who came here from Australia, and that's exactly, and they had 3 boys and they wanted a girl. So they came all the way and they traveled and they mortgaged their home and they did all these things so that they could pay to make sure that they had a girl the 4th time around. And it's just like bizarre, These people, that's just, the fact that that can be done is crazy. And then the fact that people are so programmed that you can't just be happy that you have 3 healthy children. You have to it has to be a girl this time, and you're so upset. It's just, what's that all about? What kind of strange cognitive dissonance is that? So,
well, then the cord blood banking too. Is that how they get the cells and stuff?
That's one of the ways. Yeah, I mean, they take it from the cord.
Listeners, Google and look up cord blood banking. There are commercials for this. This is real. I bet you somebody's going to turn on our show and be like, is this Buck Rogers? Like,
Right. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. It's, if you can Google cord blood banking and it's everywhere. But then there's also just that your kids, you can, if you have a hospital birth, then your DNA is taken, and that's not science fiction either. Nobody really knows about it. But you can Google something called It's My DNA, and then you can find information about how, each baby's coming through and they're being genetically, they're just taking their DNA for whatever reason we don't really know because they don't tell you that they're doing it, so how would you know why? But, and this is all just happening for real. It's like, it makes you sound crazy. Like, that's one of the things that Matt points out in his slide. He's like, you will realize that some conspiracy theories are actually true, and that's one of the things that you find out on your journey to becoming an anti-vaxxer. I think he says number 3, sometimes conspiracy theories are actually true, and you find out that is a very, very correct statement. And then and it's odd and it's strange, and we don't exactly understand why it's so, but it is. So anyway, but we're going to take a short break here, and we want to thank you, Sarah, for joining us on the intro, and tell us where to find your. Of course, as always. Where's your blog again? Give us the link to that.
sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com.
Boom, there it is. So everybody go check that out. Stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to be talking to Matt Jonker of dinnerforthought.com. So please stay with us.
I was on holiday with Sir Lawrence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK, had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. It was clear. We had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthattease.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthattease.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthattease.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
Hey, welcome back to Truth or Talk. Today's show we have Matt Jonker. Matt is a conservative millennial whose greatest wish is that people would just stop and think, why are we here? What is our purpose? How can we connect the dots? He is a father, author, and an anti-vaxxer. A recent article entitled 15 Things You Should Know Before Becoming an Anti-Vaxxer has gone viral on the internet. After reading it, we decided that we just had to have him on the show. especially in light of everything that's going on in the media right now. You can find this article, and his other well-written blog post at dinnerforthought.com. To keep up with his blog and receive current information on vaccines, you can check out his Facebook group, The Vaccine Gamble. So please welcome to the show, Matt Jonker. Hey, Matt.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, Matt. What's going on?
It's our pleasure to have you. So I'm glad you could be on the show today.
Absolutely.
So, we in your intro, I mentioned that we found you through this really well-written essay, 50 Things You Should Know Before Becoming an Anti-Vaxxer. It's like my life story right there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, everything you say is perfectly stated. So tell us, how did you become an anti-vaxxer? And what is it? What does it mean to be an anti-vaxxer?
Well, I didn't used to be an anti-vaxxer like a lot of people. The funny thing is I was not vaccinated growing up. I grew up in kind of a naturalistic household, and, my parents were grow-it-themselves type of people. We had a very large garden and took advantage of that, did lots of the natural eating. Didn't really do a whole lot of allopathic medicine. And then I got a little bit older and, started to think they were a little bit nuts. And so I had an appendectomy in 2008. And I credited the doctors for saving my life. They were able to operate on me, in their estimation, about a half hour before my appendix burst. And from that time on, they had my allegiance. And really, when my son was born, my wife was, full in support of the full vaccine schedule. And at that point, I was too. I mean, I figured, the experts know what they're talking about. They've done all their research. And so we had our son fully vaccinated through 2 years. Even through his severe ADHD issues and his behavioral issues, he would go through screaming rage fits for hours at a time for really no reason. And it was frustrating, but we really had no reason to believe it was the vaccines at that point. Then I had my daughter, and this was about a year and a half after we had my son. We had her fully vaccinated through 1 year. And I had really started to do some research on vaccines. I'd talked to some people. I'd seen some things online. My curiosity was piqued, and so I'd started to do a little bit of research. And by the time she was 1, I'd really kind of come to the inward conclusion that I didn't like the idea of vaccines, that it was there were a lot of risks there, and the rabbit hole is pretty deep. I conceded to my wife. We got her 12-month shots. And very shortly after that, I noticed immediate difference in her. I mean, she went from 100th percentile, weight and height and all that, and into pretty much suddenly regressing. She was happy and healthy beforehand, and suddenly we noticed that she wasn't really making eye contact. She was hesitant to smile. She would just kind of stare off into space for extended periods of time, and it really freaked me out. I looked at some of the early signs for autism, and she seemed to have some of them, and I immediately thought the vaccine could have done it. I know she had her MMR at her last appointment, along with whatever other ones she got at that time. Mom was the one that brought her to the doctor, but so it really freaked me out, and I really started to dig into it. Started the vaccine gamble, just to get in a kind of a like-minded arena, have some support, because obviously, as you know, not many people are anti-vax or even realize there's a debate here, anything legitimate. We're immediately brushed off, as you know, by media. It's quite aggravating. We decided to stop vaccinating both kids at that point. Well, I did, and then I had to convince my wife to look into it a little bit more for herself, which she has started to do, and is finally on the same boat as I am, which is really nice. And we have a third on the way, due in 3 weeks actually, and we will not be vaccinating her. We are going to have a hospital birth, and look forward to kind of chronicling that whole adventure. My wife's doctor has been pretty adamant that he does not support our decision, and I think we're going to end up finding a new doctor here after this child is born, and just kind of put that in our rearview mirror. It's been kind of frustrating, but bottom line, what does it mean to be an anti-vaxxer? it's kind of frustrating because this really isn't a title that I chose for myself.
Yeah.
It's been something that we've been labeled as you know, and I've embraced the title now. But at first I would have considered myself pro more studies or pro more science. The science is not complete here, not even near, as you know, and so I guess that's what it means to be an anti-vaxxer, to question vaccines. That's what I would say. If you start questioning vaccines and making some kind of a public stand, you're immediately branded an anti-vaxxer.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious. What was your pediatrician's reaction when you decided not to vaccinate? Was he bullying? Was he I want to know how did he approach you after you made that decision?
Well, it actually wasn't the pediatrician. Well, we did have a female pediatrician, and she was very nice, and I respected her. But when we made the decision to stop vaccinating, we just stopped going to the pediatrician. They are no longer our pediatrician. The one that's been giving us the flag is my wife's OBGYN, and he's the one that he actually delivered her when she was born, and he's delivered both of our children as well. He's the one that's been giving her the most flack at her doctor's appointments while she's pregnant, pushing the shots, and even though she's given some valid reasons, he doesn't seem satisfied with those.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know. Are you familiar with Suzanne Humphreys?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Did you see that lecture she gave? So she gave she's given a few, but I think her latest lecture she gave, where she's talking about a doctor from the Mayo Clinic. I think his name is Jacob. Oh, I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a minute. But he basically has been giving lectures to doctors on how to persuade parents to vaccinate who are against anti-vaccination. And then he has a PowerPoint, which you can actually find online. And in the PowerPoint, he says, don't plan on giving parents information or printing any links out or giving them links to the CDC or printing any, anything out to give them. And then he also says to persuade rather than inform. I thought that was very disturbing,
Yeah. Yeah, are you sure his name wasn't Paul Offit? Because he's done that.
Yeah. His name is, let me see if I can find it. I had it and slipped through me, but, no. Yeah, what are your thoughts on him, too? We have that as a question. I mean, we read your rebuttal.
Yeah.
I was rolling.
Yeah,
it was perfectly humorous. Yes, we did. So, could you elaborate on that? Kind of
on Dr. Offit?
Yeah.
Yeah, he holds a special place in my heart. Let's just say that. Not for any good reasons. And I think a lot of us read the LA Times article in which, he was chronicled basically teaching other doctors how to combat us. And it, was along the same lines as the doctor that you just mentioned. It was quite an infuriating article to read, and that is really when I decided to start the blog. I really wanted to write some kind of a detailed rebuttal, and that was the first blog I wrote on vaccines. And I think it summarized my feelings pretty well.
The article that you wrote about Dr. Offit, yeah, I think it did, because you ended it with basically, we've studied this and we know what's going on and you're fired. We don't want you.
Yeah.
We don't need your advice because it he comes off as very I would say arrogant and has kind of and talks down to anybody who questions vaccinology, or as we like to call it, because it's once you start. One of the things in your article that went viral that we mentioned in your intro is that you talk about all the different kind of rabbit holes that you go down once you start stumbling across this, and how, once you realize that you're not the one who's really anti-science, because there's actually a lot of science to back that.
There's actually against vaccination.
Exactly.
There's more science against vaccination, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually more science on our side than there is on theirs. And, it's a pretty deep rabbit hole, which sometimes seems like it's never ending. You can kind of just keep going to one, and then it will lead to another, and so on and so forth. And I thought that one of the things that you, well, first of all, actually, before I get into that, I want to know what led you to start becoming public about it? Why did you come out as an anti-vaxxer?
I think, well, what I did was I started the Vaccine Gamble, which is a Facebook group, and I'd been a part of some other Facebook groups before that, which is where I really had started my research, and I really wanted to get some of my friends on the same page as I did. You know, when I first started, I didn't realize what kind of backlash you can suffer from becoming public on this. I mean, the emotions are so high here, and so when I started my group, I added several of my friends that I knew sort of had questions or at least backed my stance. And then I also kind of plugged the new group in one of the larger anti-vax groups out there. And what really got me going publicly was when I first started my group, I was more or less sabotaged by a Facebook page called Things Anti-Vaxxers Say. I don't know if you ever heard of them or not, tabs.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous, and I'm not going to spend time promoting them. But they got into my group. I was new to being an admin and pretty much accepted anybody that had requested to come in. And they tried to shut me down, and I wasn't having it. So I ended up removing most of those trolls, and from there on, I was really spurred to speak out publicly. I'd become disgusted with the mentality that many pro-vaxxers have on us. And so really, as I continue to get encouragement for my writing and, the way that I voice my opinions, it really boosted my confidence, and I started to get as public as I could. After I wrote this blog, 15 Things You Should Know Before Becoming an Anti-Vaxxer, my best friend of 7 years, he was my best man, I was his best man in each of our weddings, we ended up getting in a fight over this blog, and I haven't spoken to him since. Very hard, and it does happen. People lose friends, people lose family members, and it's really quite ridiculous how close-minded certain people can be. You've seen all the stories too. It's just you can't go back once you see the stories and the videos of these kids that lives were changed hours after vaccination, if not immediately. You just can't dismiss that. It's not anecdotal evidence. You can't dismiss it. It's there for us to see, and we should be doing much more studies on it. And so until that's done, I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to keep speaking up. So.
Damn it, Matt! You just answered 3 of my questions. Oh my God! Right? No. This is wonderful. This is great. So I was going to ask you about well, first of all, family and friends. One of the questions, have you lost any friends or family members as a result? You have, and we've definitely gone through that too, and it's very painful because you think that these people would at least look into what you're talking about before they judge you and just shut you off and make you one of those people, So I think that was really painful.
Yeah, we've been programmed to believe that vaccines are safe. I mean, it's the media, it's the money involved. We have literally been brainwashed, and until you can step back and look at that objectively, you're not going to realize it. It's called cognitive dissonance. You know that. So.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, with the April situation, and I mean, I didn't have. Well, now after doing research, I know that I was vaccine injured because I had asthma really bad, when I was younger, but. Before that, when April was telling me what was going on with her situation, and I guess I saw it from my own eyes, I took the time to look into it, she was my friend. So if somebody says something that's my friend, then I'm like, oh, that's weird, but why would you think that? I'm going to investigate that. And I think the thing that really was upsetting to me is that people didn't even take the time that I felt like would have took to them to actually ask me why do I have the change of thought that I have or the opinions that I have now, instead of just completely writing me off. And not too long ago, my baby cousin just had her first child, and I took the time and I put together loads and loads of information when I found out she was pregnant, and I sent it to her, and she didn't get back to me, and I thought that maybe she was just busy because I know she's busy and she's not really on top of getting back to people. So when I talked to her at her baby shower, and I was like, yeah, did you get the information I sent you? And she's like, yeah, we're going to vaccinate. And I was like, well, why? She goes, oh, because we found that the people that are that decide not to vaccinate are from highly affluent families, and we think they're not taking poor children into consideration. I'm like, are you kidding? That's all you so I know, of course, she didn't look at the information, but I guess that's just how she reached her decision,
Right.
And she's very stuck on this whole thing about class and social class and stuff. So that's really what led her to make her decision, or so she says. And I feel like we haven't really fought, but I feel like there's kind of been a wedge between us. But what was really interesting was her best friend came up to me later and told me that she was anti-vaccination too, and that she had tried to get through to her, and she just wasn't having it. So,
Right.
The best thing you can do is just, the way that I operate now is okay, I know this information, I try and give it to people. If they can't accept it or won't accept it, that's the best I can do. But I can't know this information and not tell anybody anything, because I'm afraid that they're going to think I'm crazy.
That's exactly how I feel too. I feel like it has to get out there. Not enough people know the risks. Not enough people know that vaccinations really aren't that effective. So.
Right. Yeah, and then they're very, very dangerous, and that's the other thing too, is that people don't know, and if you know that as yourself, and then you don't say anything, you would almost feel guilty every time you see a vaccine-injured child or somebody get hurt by it. Not even a child. I mean, there's adults being injured as well. Yeah. And in the military, the elderly. I mean, we're seeing it over and over again. And if you know and do nothing, it's almost like you're guilty as well. So that's where it's almost an obligation, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say what kills me, too, is that people, they kind of do know that people can get injured from vaccines, but then they'll say, oh, well, that's just very rare. But the thing I find interesting is anybody that gets the vaccine injured, nobody thinks it's going to happen to them, How do you know? Even if it's rare, how do you know it's not going to happen to you? You don't,
It's vaccine roulette. We don't know. We don't know when it's going to happen.
Right, and the vaccine gamble, that's a perfect title, because it is a gamble. You really don't know. There's nothing, you're not carrying anything on you that says I'm going to be vulnerable to vaccines. And then once you recognize what's in them, you kind of realize that maybe anyone can be vulnerable to it. So that's one of the things you mentioned in your blog was, one of the things that you'll find out is what's in a vaccine. That's a good question to start with before people dismiss what you're saying. Do they even know what's in them?
Right.
So talk about, when you started looking at vaccine inserts, what did you find?
Well, I found some things I didn't expect to find, I'll tell you that. What I'd heard, the big topic is vaccines and a link to autism, which obviously the mainstream will tell you has been debunked, which is far from true. When I looked at the inserts at first, I looked at a Tripedia insert, which they don't use anymore. It's the old DTaP shot, and that actually lists autism and SIDS as a side effect. And what the pro-vaxxers will tell you as well, it's that's just correlative, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's causative. Well, there's other studies you can look at too that are causative, like the new SIDS study that just came out recently. 69 kids dead in one test, and they speculate it is from the vaccine. So we do know that bad things can happen. But as far as the inserts go, really, the ingredients aren't as important to me as the studies themselves. And they'll tell you right off the bat in the inserts what kids and how many kids came down with what and what the percentage is. And then they test a vaccine against another vaccine. So it's not, it's a very poor system at best. That really doesn't seem like it should be even scientifically valid. But obviously I don't have a...
It's more like voodoo witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry,
it's okay. So I started looking into thimerosal and aluminum. The preservatives, you can use one or the other in a vaccine, and the media will tell you that thimerosal, which is a form of mercury, has been taken out of the vaccines. Some of them will admit that they're in the inactive flu vaccine. But what I find interesting is that there have been tests done, and there are still very low levels of thimerosal in many vaccines. They're just not necessarily on the ingredients list.
Oh wow!
Aluminum. You mentioned Suzanne Humphreys, and she's delved a lot into the aluminum connection with neurological disorders. And I mean, on the first day that a baby's born, as you know, you're going to get the hepatitis B shot, and that right there has 250 micrograms of aluminum, which is about 25 times the EPA limit for a child that size. And then you talk, I mean, if you have a preemie and you're going to vaccinate on the same schedule, you have some real potential for issues there. And then, 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months for the diphtheria, tetanus, and Bordetella pertussis shots. Those each have about 800 micrograms of aluminum. And so we're seeing these SIDS rates most common between ages of 4 months and 6 months. And that is just very suspicious correlation with the schedule of the shots that we're all getting today. So, and then the big thing I have a problem with, and it's the reason that I'm going to get the religious exemption before my kids start school, is the MRC5 and WI38 human diploid cell lines. Yeah. And these are, from the aborted fetal cells in the 60s. And I have an issue with that. Just morally, myself, my own opinion, and that right there, I can't support a science that supports what I believe to be murder, and I just can't get on board with that myself. And then you're talking about injecting foreign DNA into an infant, and no studies have been done on that. We don't know what causes a lot of these things. We need more studies. Bottom line.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, there are doctors now who've like that with the with asthma. So right. because it's closely it mimics, or it's not mimics, but it's very close to like lung tissue, right, or bronchial tissue, whatever. So the body, you're injecting your body with that, and then the body starts to attack itself. Because actually, that's what according to their theory, that's what the vaccine was designed to do, was to attack, right, any right. invaders. So basically, it's attacking itself, and then that's how you get asthma. So then there have more people that that are getting asthma. That actually, it's just people die from asthma. The TV. I mean, I'm working on my asthma. I'm better, but I used to be terrible. I've almost died a couple times just from asthma.
Yeah, my wife, when she was younger, had severe asthma attacks as well. I mean, she was fully vaccinated. At that time, we didn't give as many vaccinations, but still fully vaccinated. And she, is it from the vaccines? I can't say that with proof. I can't prove it, but it sure is. What is it? What are the stats? 1 in how many now? Is it 1 in 6 now getting diagnosed with autism? Do I have that right? I don't have my stats right in front of me, but it's some unreal number, and didn't really used to be heard of a whole lot before the 60s. So.
Yeah, right. A lot of these modern diseases, too, are autoimmune disorders, and so when you're talking about cells or attacking upon themselves, or the body developing antibodies against itself, it's almost like developing an allergy to your own cells, and then that would be things like these new diseases like Crohn's or fibromyalgia, or these things that, we never heard of these. I haven't heard these. I just started learning about these within like the last 5 to 10 years. And all of a sudden, there's all these autoimmune disorders where people's bodies are aching all over and they're attacking themselves. And I learned recently, I don't know if you know this, Matt, but there was an article in SmartVax that showed the historical use of the words allergies and anaphylaxis actually can be traced back to a vaccine injury.
Really? No, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, those words were actually created in response to a group of people. I think there was a reaction to smallpox, and then there was also a reaction to the rabies vaccine. And they originally labeled it serum sickness. Oh. And then they came up with the words allergies and anaphylaxis. I'll send it to you.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So getting back to your blog, because there's so much going on in the media right now, I want to bring up what in your 15 things you write about, number 8, you said you'll start to despise the mainstream media. So this is very, very true. We were just talking about this before we got on the phone with you, because there's so much going on in the news right now about this measles outbreak, and I say that with quotations because, compared to these other things that we're talking about, asthma, allergies, autism, et cetera, it's not that much going on. But what do you think about this media blitz, and what do you think is going on here?
Well, I mean, up until probably 2-3 years ago, I would have gone right along with it. It's something that we're programmed. I grew up watching the news with my parents. You just kind of depend on that. You depend on true journalism. You depend on them to get the facts right. And really, after studying this for so long, and just spending an extended period of time in this topic, I can see right through all of their statements. They're misguided. And sometimes they're blatant lies in some cases. I think a lot of the anchors that are spurring this are just reading words from a teleprompter and don't necessarily even know what they're talking about. But you know, what is it? All the major media companies are owned by 6 major corporations, and they're told what to say. They're told what to make a story, and so here we are. It's media chaos, and it's turned really, really ugly. I mean, this whole thing's just been ramped up in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and it's got people even like my dad, who's a pretty reserved person, speaking out on it. I mean, it's really caught the attention of a lot of people and become a presidential topic now too. So it's getting kind of scary. I don't see it getting better anytime soon, but hopefully it doesn't get worse.
Well, but you know what though? The thing that I think about, the reason why they are ramping it up, because I think that the quote unquote anti-vaccine movement is having an impact.
Yes. And
people are actually starting to question vaccines and look into it. And, I go around, I'm in Los Angeles, so I drive around and I see all these billboards saying to vaccinate and, warning people to vaccinate. And even in that PDF, the guy's name is Dr. Robert M. Jacobson from the Mayo Clinic, or Mayo Clinic. I'll send you some of the stuff we're talking about later if you want to look into it. But basically, even in his PowerPoint, presentation, he says that the anti-vaccine movement is thriving, So people are freaking out and doing all of this stuff, and there's a push because we are making an impact. And, Sherry Tenpenny, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know Sherry Tenpenny? Yeah, she's just been put on this, kind of like a watch list or something from the United Nations because of her blogging and her information, people in Eastern Europe are refusing to vaccinate now. So it's scary, but that it's not scary. But I think it's coming to a point where I think people are gonna have to pick sides.
Yes. There's hardly any middle ground anymore.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna have to pick this. Even my boyfriend, who's like on the fence a little bit, but he's looking into it, and he made he just put a question on his Facebook page, and he got this person calling him a rape lover, and
Wow.
She went off on him, call him like vanilla hipster, like he
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, it was just
I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen that.
He was just calling, just went off and just basically just called him everything but a child of God. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, I get this every day. Welcome to the club. Hello. It's like, what's the worst thing you've been called? Has it been called the worst thing you've been called?
Boy. I don't even know. Can I say
you gotta
that?
have a sense of humor.
I've been called pretty much everything in the book. The biggest one that bothers me, and it's not even really that big of a deal, is when people say that my opinion is just invalid because I don't have credentials, I don't have a medical degree, I don't have formal scientific training or anything like that. That one really gets under my skin because I know how much I've researched. I know all the information's out there, and it shouldn't really matter. It's just an opinion. If you don't want to agree with it, then don't agree with it, but don't sit here and just slander my name because you don't agree with it. That's the one that gets under my skin the most.
But if you do have a medical degree, then you're crazy. You're a
quack.
So there's no really way out of it. I'll post up. And this is when I think pretty much the beginning of last year is when I've stopped really fighting with people, because then you get in to these social media confrontations with people, and you think that you can just give them information and that they'll look at it. They won't look at shit. They just want to be right. They're rigid and but I do still do that because I know that there are people that are silently watching, that are afraid or that are kind of on the fence, that are going to look at that stuff and look at our conversation, and then in the end they're going to make themselves look like the jerk, because the people that actually do read that information are going to be like, oh my God, they're going to see. But yeah.
I think we're silently influencing more people than we think.
Yeah, definitely. What is I was going to ask you too. What do you have any tips for arguing with social media people?
Yeah, I've been through quite a few of them. I started, I'm kind of I'm a no-nonsense kind of a guy, so when I first started getting these attacks, I reciprocated them and discovered that doesn't really get you very far. So I've sort of reverted to providing solid links, and, that means no natural news or, whatever, because that's a quick one to get dismissed just because they're sensationalist, and that's not to say they don't have some really good information, but I just try to avoid that when I can. I try to use government statistics or studies, because there's all kinds of stuff on PubMed that most people have no idea is there, and these are studies that the mainstream will tell you don't exist. Well, you can find all that really without looking very hard. That's the great thing about the Facebook groups, is that all that stuff's there for you to access fairly easily, and there's so much information there to glean from. So I'll share what I consider to be rock solid references, and then I will put it into my own wording. If I got to get a little cocky, I might use a little sarcasm from time to time.
You got it. You got
to throw in a few punches, but
right.
At the same time, you got to be civil. And so I'd say that the biggest thing in this debate, especially because of what we mentioned before, people silently reading it and then silently reading information, they're going to be a whole lot more likely to do that if you present yourself professionally. And civilly. They're going to look at the other side calling you names and calling you scum of the earth, and then they're going to look at you, and you're going to have a level-headed response. And who are you more likely to believe? So.
Yeah.
We've noticed on your blog too that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Virstyne.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say you don't use a lot of links on your blog, and in the one we've talked about on the show already, the 15 things, you don't use any. So why did you choose not to use any links?
I actually.
Or any references?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question too, and that's probably the top criticism that I've gotten. I've gotten some support for it. Really, it's not a choice at this point. I sort of explained that in the group yesterday. I had a blog comment, and my blog now has, I'm looking at it now, 626 comments on it, and a lot of them are, saying that my opinion is invalid because I don't provide links. The bottom line is I started a website. It's a free website. It's Weebly, and this is something that I just kind of wanted to get publicly accessible. And so at this time, I own my own small business. It's seasonal, and I'm very slow right now. In fact, I'm pretty much a stay-at-home dad while my wife is working this winter until spring. And so money's a little bit tight, and I fully plan to, in the spring, switch hosts and go to WordPress, and there I will actually be able to post URLs and videos. And so I'm planning to write something along the lines of 15 things with similar aspects, and include all kinds of links because I've got them. We know I've got them, and I just at this point can't add URLs. If I do add them, they're not live, so you got to copy and paste. And so I decided to not. And another reason is I think people should do their own research. I do give plenty of Google keywords and areas to research within the blog, within all my blogs. I give you good places to start with. And then I think that if you're reliant on being spoon-fed information, you're not going to retain it as well. So I think that if you do your own homework and you really put in the research yourself, it is so important. I think we all should be doing it. I realize not everybody's interested in this topic, but I mean, we're talking about our kids' safety, our kids' health, and our future generations too. This is what we're fighting for. And I think it's very important, and I think that people that are interested should really put in the time to search for that. And then in the blog I wrote here too, I did include the name of the vaccine gamble. And the group has grown by almost 2,000 members in the last month, just from people reading this blog and joining the group, and they're finding that we just have a wealth of information. You've seen it, April. You're a member of the group.
Yeah.
So you know how much is out there, and so that's the reason I didn't include links or haven't included links. But that doesn't mean that in the future I will not, because I do realize the importance of putting legitimate links into my writing. It more or less started out as my thoughts being expressed onto a computer screen. And it was never really intended to go viral. I had no idea it was going to go viral. I started this, I started the blog to reach out to family members and friends of mine, to try to kind of get on their level. You know, I'm just like you type of thing. Like, hey, here, this is what I've done. This is why it's important. I wanted to lay it out in a way that was easy to understand. And, so that was my goal with the blog. And I look to expand on that here in the near future.
Yeah, and I actually liked that you didn't use the links, because I write a blog too, and I kind of do a similar thing because I look at this as sort of a personal journey, and it's introspective, and you have to kind of look at it, and like you said, you know, sometimes it's better to just to send people, okay, Google this, and then look it up, and they will retain the information more than if you just spoon feed them a link. And it seemed to me like when you start the letter as kind of like or here, I'll just read a little excerpt from it. You say, Dear normal, socially accepted person, there are some important things you should probably know about. Take it from me. I used to be like you. If I could step back in time, I just might. Consider this a warning. I remember being normal. It was great. I didn't have to worry about getting weird looks, people backing away, or suffering an endless barrage of public scrutiny. The life. But something remarkable happened. I became a father. And so you start off, I think that it's almost like the journey to becoming a grown-up.
Yeah.
And, you know, taking responsibility for your own life. And so maybe there's something in that. It's like, okay, I'm giving you this information. This is my story. This is my journey. These are the things that I've experienced. Now it's your turn to do the work that I've done, because I've done hundreds and thousands of hours of research. So, you know.
Yeah, it was meant to be a perspective piece. And so that anybody reading it could instantly relate to me, because the people that should be reading it are parents and new parents and people that have kids on the way. And these are the people that we're really trying to get to and to let them know, hey, there's stuff out here that you haven't seen or may not have heard about. And you're not going to hear it from your doctors, even though they're supposed to divulge all those risks, you know, based on the package inserts that specifically ask them to do that. They're not doing that. And so you're not going to hear it from them, and they're the supposed experts. It's really easy to just go with whatever they say, but look, there's a side to this that you're missing, and you need to see it. So.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because you're talking about kind of like April is like a rite of passage of like growing up, you know, by doing your own research. But I think that's the problem with our modern society too. We've been kind of made children. You know, we're so dependent on people to do things for us and to look up stuff for us, and people just want to, plus they're just so distracted with their work and their jobs, they just want to come, you know, home from work, sit down, turn on the TV, and let the TV tell them what to think, how to feel, and what to do, you know?
I get it. I mean, being a parent of young kids, and a fairly young person myself, I mean, you get burned out. You don't necessarily have the energy to do it, and fortunately, I've been instilled with this vivacious energy to actually research this, and so have many other people. You know, a lot of people just aren't interested. They'd rather trust their doctor or what the news tells them.
Yeah, until it affects them, you know. Then they'll get the energy. But we want to try and stop it before, you know, they get hurt. And that's the thing, too, that, like, annoys me. Most people that are quote unquote anti-vax were pro-vax at one point, you know, because they either got vaccine injured themselves, or they knew somebody that was vaccine injured, or their sons or daughters were, you know. So it's just very interesting, you know. And then they want to dismiss
decision. Right.
Yeah, totally. And they usually want to dismiss anecdotal evidence, quote unquote, you know. But I mean, to me, that's how they get people into getting vaccines. They show us pictures of people with iron lungs and covered in measles and pock marks, and, you know, starving third world country or skinny, you know, third world country children, and say, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, this is going to happen to you.
Right.
You know?
It's completely ridiculous.
That's how they fearmonger us.
You know, according to their standard, their logic, I mean, it must be a miracle that we've even survived as a species. You know, I mean, we must have been on the verge of elimination by the time vaccines came around, and clearly they saved us, right? So.
Yeah, totally. Even though, you know, we survived for thousands of years before that without them, but, you know, hey, go figure. You know, like, you know.
So.
Right, and then when going back to this whole measles thing, because everybody knows right now that the measles is out there. Everyone's saying, Mickey Mouse, he's dirty measles, spreading it everywhere, or whatever. I don't know exactly the official story, but it came from Disneyland, I guess. But
he got it from Donald.
Yeah, somebody over there is spreading measles.
Well, Donald must not have been vaccinated. I guess.
Yeah, I tell you.
Obviously not. And so you talked in your a couple different articles, or a few of your articles. You mentioned something called herd immunity, and so explain what the official story is of herd immunity is. This is something that I think is what is causing a lot of this cognitive dissonance, is this misunderstanding of what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We all know, or we've all heard the expression that we've got to get vaccinated, or we have to vaccinate our kids to protect the herd. And I think that's based on statistics from Dr. Hedrich, who basically discovered in, I think it was 1933, that he observed measles, and obviously in 33, measles was a big deal. I mean, it wasn't a big deal in that it was benign for most cases, as it is today. Death rates hadn't plummeted quite to where they were right before the vaccine was introduced yet then, but he noticed that 68% of the population, when they were naturally immune, and that is naturally contracting the disease and defeating it, when they were naturally immune, 68% of the population, you stopped having epidemics. And so what they've done today is pretty much hijacked that theory that of natural immunity to apply it with vaccines, and say that if we, and I think now it's 95%, that's the expected number, that if 95% of our population is vaccinated for measles, we won't get epidemics, or we won't have outbreaks. And that's ridiculous to me after looking at Dr. Tatiana Abukanich. I always murder that last name. I've studied her quite a bit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work or not, but she wrote a book called The Vaccine Illusion, and very informative. I watched some of her lectures on YouTube and fully agree with her. She's got a PhD and very knowledgeable. And she basically, we know, she shares these studies. We know that the vaccine is not as effective as they tell us, because in any outbreak, there are vaccinated people that get it. And there have been outbreaks in the last 2 decades that have been in primarily vaccinated populations. In fact, one outbreak occurred in a population that was 99% quote-unquote immunized. And so this is mind-blowing when you think about it, because this defies herd immunity as we know it. It should be impossible, but it's not, and that's because herd immunity is only a theory, and it never panned out. And we are not anywhere near the number of people that are immune to measles as we should be to achieve herd immunity. In fact, there have been studies done, you can find them on PubMed, that compared people vaccinated for the measles, and what they discovered is that only about half of the population, at least in their study groups, that are vaccinated for measles have what they call high responders, and that's that their blood titers are high enough to combat the measles, and a high responder could be temporarily immune from the measles for 10 to 15 years. And then after that, it wanes. And then the other half are low responders. These are people that get the vaccines, and it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Their titer count remains very low. And so anytime they would come in contact with the measles, they could get it. And Dr. Tatiana was one of those people. She was vaccinated twice as a child and still got the measles. And so that really started her wondering why, and she looked into it, and this is what she found based on other studies. And so herd immunity just isn't what we think it is. It's a theory, and it's not one that's ever panned out. It's obvious to me that at least 50% of the American population, especially in adults, are not immune for measles. Is it effective if you go in and you go ahead?
Oh, no, go on, and then I'll jump off back.
I was going to say, is it effective if you go in for your boosters? You know, now the CDC recommends adult boosters and boosters when you go into college, for example. I'm not ever going to deny that the vaccine science or the concept of vaccines is wrong, because I do think that vaccines in most cases will give you temporary immunity, especially if you're a high responder. That being said, it's a lie to say that it's 95 to 99% effective. We can see that it's not. We can see that there's still outbreaks, and in highly vaccinated rates of population. So we can see all that. We can look around and we can see that and come to the conclusion that herd immunity just is not what they claim it is.
Well, I was going to jump on that too and say, do you know Russell Blaylock, Dr. Russell Blaylock? He wrote a really good article.
I love Dr. Blaylock.
Yeah, he's funny too. He has a great sense of humor. But anyway, he was saying that also, because you brought up the whole booster thing, that there were people walking around for decades that were, quote unquote, not immune because their teeter count or teeter, I don't know how to say that exactly, but it was very low. Was low, right? And they found out that the antibodies actually waned after a certain amount of time. So that's when they started to recommend boosters. So in that time, there were no outbreaks that happened. So, technically
right.
the population wasn't vaccinated, and there were no outbreaks. So why,
Right,
why was
and after we can observe this, and after we see that and realize what's going on with the whole quote-unquote immunity that's coming from these vaccines, what we should really be doing is hearing the media talk about, well, everybody better get their teeters checked. Everybody better get their boosters, because you're just as vulnerable as any of the unvaccinated kids that we're all crying out against. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just having sound trouble. Continue.
I was just going to say that kind of lost my train of thought there. Where was I going with that? I'm sorry. Go on.
We were talking about Russell Blaylock and boosters, and we were jumping on.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. You're right. Thank you. You're getting vaccinated. MMR is a live attenuated virus vaccine, and they've also discovered that these vaccines have the potential to shed. I mean, you've heard that term, and I'm not going to say that it's common, but it is definitely plausible and has been done. Well, we don't hear that on the vaccine inserts themselves for MMR2, for example, from Merck. It tells people that have just been vaccinated to stay away from immunocompromised people or pregnant women or people that are in high risk situation within 3 weeks after their vaccination. So we do know that it's an issue and that it has the potential to happen, yet we're not hearing that. So we have this media public outcry for everybody to go get vaccinated. Okay, so now we've got even more people running around with a live attenuated virus in their systems, and it's become even more risky. I'm surprised, honestly, I'm really surprised that there's only been 100 cases of measles in this whole thing. I would have expected the number to actually be much higher than it is. But
and even if it's not common, it really just takes like one person to spread it.
Right.
If they're shedding, and they're, that's all it takes is like one person, to shed the virus and spread it to others.
And have no idea.
But what's even more interesting, and have no, what's going on, definitely. And the thing that's really interesting, too, is that if natural immunity lasts longer than vaccine-induced immunity, so people get a vaccine, then their antibodies wane, they get another vaccine, then they wane. They have to keep going back to boost their immune system. So they're, dependent on vaccines like a drug to keep them. But this is perfect for the pharmaceutical industry if you want to make money, especially not only are you coming in for the vaccine, but the vaccine causes side effects.
Yep.
It's been linked to other autoimmune disorders. I mean, you're a patient for life.
It's a black hole. It is.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why there's so much opposition to this. But I was reading, there's an article that Roman Bystrionic and Suzanne Humphreys wrote. I think it's basically just a bunch of excerpts from their book, But one of the references they make, I think it's like number 34, where they discovered that people, they took a group of people who couldn't produce a high amount of antibodies, and they found out that they were actually they got the measles, and they actually recovered just as well as people that didn't have, or that did have high antibody counts. So it's not just the antibody count that what's the word I'm looking for, that establishes if you're immune or not. There are other factors that are in place, like the cellular, they call it the cellular memory of the immune system. It's much complicated. The immune system is much complicated too than they're actually.
Much more complicated. Yes, you're right. And they're only targeting one aspect of the human immune system, and we don't even understand that part of it.
Yeah.
And we're not targeting any of the other pieces of the immune system, to which if you really wanted to have true immunity, you'd need to target the whole thing. It just further confirms my beliefs that we're not meant to be doing this. So
and
the other thing too that I wanted to bring up with measles is we've kind of created for ourselves a nasty situation, and that's exactly what you mentioned. We've become dependent on the vaccines for immunity, and we're also told that if you have the vaccine, a mother who's just had an infant can pass those antibodies on through breast milk to the infant for within the first six months to 1 year. Well, that's not true. That's never been proven. But what has been proven is if you have natural immunity from the measles, if mom got it when she was young, she could definitely pass on those antibodies. Baby would be very strong to resist measles, within the first year of life. And then after that, measles usually isn't a big deal in a healthy person. So you wouldn't really have to worry about it if you're healthy already. And it's a benign disease for those of us who are healthy. So that's an issue. We've become somewhat dependent on vaccines over and over again. And we talk about the vaccine schedule now. What's it going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? At this rate, it's going to be just unbelievable. And
1,000 shots.
Yeah. Now you're on your way to Paul Offit craziness. What he's doing, 10,000 vaccines and
no, it's 100,000. It's 100,000. He raised.
He said that. Yeah, he said that, and then he realized, I think, how silly that sounded. So he said something much more rational and said 10,000, obviously. So.
Yeah. But I would just like to see him strapped to a chair and take that.
I'm right there.
I think each vaccine injured parent should get like a needle and just be able to walk up to him and like stick it into him. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll see how well he can function after even 10 at the same time, is what I have to say. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, with him too. I mean, he's just a walking conflict of interest. With his.
Oh, absolutely.
With his and with your rebuttal in that article too. I didn't know this. You taught me something that that rotavirus kills very, very little people. And then in addition to that, his rotavirus vaccine was found laced with pig virus, porcine, right? Porcine virus, that's the swine flu or something. They find that?
Yeah, that
He's
rotavirus.
He's retarded.
For lack of a better word, sure. And the thing is I think he's a very smart man, actually, and I honestly believe that he understands to a certain degree what he's doing, and I don't think he cares. He's made millions off rotavirus vaccine, and does that help children in third world countries that really do suffer severe and do die from rotavirus? The statistics that they give you from rotavirus are from third world countries to make it seem scary, but in reality, rotavirus kills. It only at the most in the last since the vaccine's been available, it's only killed 40 people per year. I mean, it's basically a really nasty diarrhea. And as long as you are, as long as you maintain your fluids and, you do everything right, it's a benign disease. It's something to worry about perhaps if you're in poor health. But if you're in poor health, don't get a vaccine.
And it's weird. But all they have to do is clean up their water. Clean up their environment. Give them nutrition.
Clean mineralized water, and you're done.
Give them water.
Like that's why they're dying in these third world countries. There's a meme that I've seen travel around Facebook where they're like starving African children, and they're like, it's like, we're starving and have no shelter and clean water, but don't worry, millions, hundreds of vaccines have arrived to save us.
Well,
it's just ridiculous.
they paint the picture like the indigenous people over there are just hopping right in line to get these vaccines, but you can find articles elsewhere that paint quite a different picture of these people actually being quite scared and have seen negative effects and deaths. And we don't hear about that. We hear about the glorified aspect of this, and it's really not the case. People go to great lengths to avoid the Red Cross over there, and I think it's inhumane the way that they test vaccines in some of these third world countries. I can't get on board with it.
Well, Bill Gates is come under fire because of the polio issue. You know about that?
Yeah.
Right. And then what else is? Oh, and then in the Philippines, they found their vaccines laced with like HCG, which is a sterilant.
Yeah, the birth control element. Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, how did that happen? Oh, it was accidentally put in there.
It's all a giant test. They're guinea pigs over there, and as it's sickening to me.
It is, and this was in mainstream media, not widely spread, but I found it in a mainstream media article not less than a year ago that in Pakistan they were vaccinating. Some of the parents of the children that were getting vaccinated started killing healthcare practitioners because they thought that they were purposely sterilizing their children. And then it turned out they had to stop the vaccine program, and it turned out that the vaccine program was actually a fake program run by the CIA so that they could spy, so they could use it as some spy. I mean, you can't make stuff like that up.
No.
It sounds like out of a movie. You're like, are you serious? That actually happened?
Well, the movie movies get them from somewhere. It's based on reality. It's just we don't know these realities, or at least it's not publicly advertised. So.
Right. I was kind of blown away by that. You get through these things and you're not surprised by anything anymore. And I thought, well, that's kind of surprising. The surprising part is that the CIA admitted it, and they said that we won't do that anymore. Sorry, we won't run any more fake vaccines.
Our bad.
We're just about out of time here, but Matt, what would you like to end with? Do you have anything that you'd like to share with anybody?
Yeah, my number one goal with writing and with vaccine awareness is to make as many people aware of the risks and the dangers that vaccines pose, to make them aware that this is an issue much more than they ever could have comprehended. The information's there. You just need to put the time in. That's really what it comes down to, and you should be very interested in this topic because it's going to affect not only your children but a whole lot of other children and future generations. It's become a national hot button topic, and it's become the subject of presidential magnifications too. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. So the sooner you familiarize yourself with this topic, the better. And,
it isn't. I mean, there's like hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of vaccines currently in development. If you go to the CDC's website and look at it, so they're not stopping. It's not, the program's just getting going. So
I would say that I'm not going to tell anybody how to make their decision. I'm not going to do that. If you want to vaccinate your kids, that's fine. That's up to you. But you do need to know that my kids are not a risk to your kids. Can they catch some of these things? Sure, but at that point, we're going to keep them quarantined and do everything we can not to spread that around to you. It's not like they're carrying around these diseases just waiting to jump out at some poor vaccinated, unsuspecting kid. So that's kind of an expression I use. It's not like So
well, that's how they make it sound, though.
That is no. It's exactly how they make it sound, and it's just
even though I got my vaccination, you're still a threat to me.
Right.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, like, you wouldn't keep your kid home if they were sick from anything. I mean, if your kid just had a cold, you'd keep them home because they're sick. It's like, it's just common sense,
Yeah.
Keep your kids home when you're sick. That's really all you have to say, and then be done with it.
Well, and I do. I'd encourage looking into homeschooling too, which is what we're doing. Just partly for this reason. It's a big reason. Is we just don't want to deal with it. And I was homeschooled myself as a kid, so I'm familiar with it. And I think that it gave me a lot of benefits. It taught me to think critically and to learn for myself. And I've been able to utilize that in the real world, especially here in this topic. So looking forward to passing that on to my kids, and at the same time have the benefit of not worrying about them coming into contact with all kinds of sick kids. And we're just going to try to boost their immune systems the way that we know best, and that's with natural foods. And that's what we're looking into. So.
Yeah, I homeschool one of my kids too. I have 3, and my oldest is 12, or he just turned 12, and he's being homeschooled. My middle child, the one that has autism, regressive after the MMR vaccine, he's still in school, but I'm looking into that in the years to come to try and get him out. And I mean, he has a vaccine injury, and it's been called that by a doctor, so he's got a medical exemption, but it's just there's other issues involved there when you come to the school system and stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with that if you're homeschooling, so you know.
Yeah.
And
yep. And before I go too, I just realized that I'd mentioned my daughter having some early signs of autism, and then I didn't clarify that she has pretty much grown out of it. We stopped vaccinating after her 12 year, and she has come a long way. She pretty much stopped progressing for about 6 months there, so I'm fairly confident that she had some kind of a reaction, and it wasn't a good one, but we have really tried concentrating on eating really healthy since that point, detox some things, and she's really come a long way. I mean, she's starting to talk, and very happy, healthy baby now. So, well, not a baby anymore, but So I just wanted to clarify that we're fairly certain that she does not have autism at this point, but that is really what drove me to research this. So.
Yeah, and that's really good that you stopped and you thought about it, because when I chronicled the events of my own son's regression, in hindsight I could go back to every single time that he was vaccinated and increased regression, that it got a little bit worse every single time. Like this time, he lost a few words, and then the next time it was he lost all of his words, and the next time it was and it just went on and on and on, and until we finally said, you're not going to pull this Jedi mind trick on me anymore, because the pediatrician kind of mesmerized me somehow.
They brush it off, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you brush it off, and then they make it almost seem like it's ludicrous to even conceptualize that could have possibly happened. So you feel like you question your own experience, and you kind of, and so then I finally said, no, I don't believe it anymore, and then have kind of gone the opposite direction ever since. Like you said, just natural, going organic, and making sure that we're doing the best to heal all that. But it's, once the damage is done, it's really hard to unravel. And so, he's 9 years old now, but he's close to 10. He'll be 10 in a couple months, and he's still, not talking. He still has quite a few challenges. So it's something that, it's very serious, and I've seen with my own eyes. And not only that, but, it's going back to what we were talking about earlier with the measles. I mean, he regressed after getting the MMR vaccine, and so he was vaccinated for measles. And then when we started working with a homeopath to clear some of the damage that the vaccine had caused, about 2 months into it, he got a measles rash. So it was dormant in his body, and it started to express out. And, there's a reason that our bodies do that. There's a reason that these things express, like you mentioned in your article, getting the chicken pox when you were a kid. I had it too. There's a reason that our bodies want these things out. It's like it's trying to get it out. It's not supposed to be like dormant inside us, because that actually wreaks more havoc on our internal organs. Yeah. So that's what another thing that I like, you empower people by saying not to fear these things, because it's really not as big a deal as you think, just actually getting the disease naturally versus having them through the vaccine.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You come to really lose your fear of these, in most cases, benign diseases. I'm not scared of the measles. Do I want my kids to get them? It kind of scares me. It can be a little bit more serious. I don't like the thought of it, but I'm not scared of it, because I know that they'll be able to handle it, and in the end, they're going to be left with vast benefits from it. Especially my daughter, if she ever has it, and she can pass that on to her kids. And so, at this point, they were both vaccinated. She only had 1 round of the MMR, so I think that would actually, they would statistically actually say that she's not vaccinated or not immune from it. So, there's that possibility, but there's just as much of a possibility that my son could get it as well. So, we're not scared of it. I say bring it on. I live in Michigan. I live in Michigan. There's been 1 case here since this whole thing started, And, you know, are we going to stay away from crowded places? Yeah, probably. But at the same time, I'm not looking to sit here in my cellar and just wait it out. You know, I'm not scared of it. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, these things start to come around. You hear these stories, and you just, I would totally agree with that statement. You just don't fear it as much because you start to realiase that, you know, the immune system is.
It's doing what it should be, you know, and
it's pretty stable.
There's a reason that these diseases and viruses and bacteria. There's a reason they're here on Earth, and we see the benefits from it scientifically, and we can't deny the benefits of natural immunity. Even the scientists will say natural immunity is much better. But what we're scared of, I guess, is people in poor health that are at higher risk of suffering complications from it. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to vaccinate my child just to protect somebody whose child might be immunocompromised. You know, if you're that worried about the fragile health of your child, then keep them at home. You should be homeschooling them. It's not my responsibility to put my child at risk for your child. I would never ask you to do the same thing for me, and so I would hope that you wouldn't ask me to do that for you. So.
Yeah, and then like I said, in the case of my son, I mean, he may have very well been shedding it this whole time. You know, because before we did the homeopathy to remove the dormant virus, because it was there, obviously, because he had expressed it. I saw it. I watched it all over his body.
Right.
And it didn't last a long time. When we used the homeopathy to clear it out, it actually was gone within 24 hours, but it was clearly the measles.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So, but anyway, we said, I think like 10 minutes ago, we were just about out of time, so I guess really about out of time. But thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really, really fun to have you. We certainly would welcome you back again. So, in the meantime, everybody check out his blog, dinnerforthought.com. His Facebook group is The Vaccine Gamble. Feel free to join and keep up with his blog, keep up with current information. Matt, have a great day. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And have a great day yourself.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertees.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertees.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertees.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good.
Hey.
You look good.
Welcome back. We're back. We just finished talking to Matt Jonker. Wasn't that awesome?
It was very good. Yes, indeed. It was awesome. I enjoyed talking to him. He's a lot of fun, and we read his article, as we mentioned during the interview, that we read it, and we liked it so much we wanted to have him on, and it was good to talk to a fellow anti-vaxxer.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's, we could have kept that conversation going for like at least a week.
Right? I know.
Yeah, totally. And we said this after we actually were off the air, but we were saying in addition to, all the research that we're doing, it also becomes actually fascinating and a little bit fun. And you trade information with people and other people teach you new things, because I think you're also just in a state of where you're just open to information. You're open. You're like, somebody might have a statistic or some other piece of information that they can add, to the things that you've been researching that can open you up to something else. And I think also this journey has taught me to be, just open to other people's ideas and opinions about things.
Yeah.
Maybe I would like to think that I wasn't before, but I think now I would at least say it's made me more open, even if,
right.
Because I know how easily, especially looking at the media, how easily, people can be dismissed and information can be manipulated, So
right.
Now, and with anybody, if they have a side I haven't heard before, I'm like, let me hear it. Not that, oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're,
right.
oh, you're a loon, you're a freak, you're a nut job, you're a, whatever, the list of things that you get called.
Just immediately dismissing people because it's not, you think that that's just absurd because it's a conspiracy theory or whatever. But like we talked about on the show, some of this stuff you can't make up. You can't make up that, people in Pakistan were killing doctors, or healthcare workers because they were sterilizing their children. It's like, that really happened, or at least it was reported on in the mainstream media, so, I mean, it's just bizarre. So either that was a faked story by them, or, I mean, I can't imagine why they would fake that, but these things are just strange, so no matter how you look at it, it's just bizarre.
Well, but I think there are also people, too, that have a trouble admitting that they don't understand something or they don't know something. That's the thing, too, and I'm trying to, I kind of profile in my own mind the pro-vax people who get really nasty. And I think we talked about it before, in the interview where it's like, they'll say things like, oh, well, you don't have credentials, so you shouldn't even be talking. They'll just dismiss you. But then if you have credentials, you're a quack. You've been debunked. You're not a credible doctor. Well, according to who? According to Quackwatch?
Right.
According to science-based medicine or Wikipedia, or we know how much they tell the truth. Which are basically, they're just high-level, they're just medical gossip columns, basically.
Exactly. And that was what we talked about with Matt, because he was saying, that's one of the things that bothers him the most is that his opinion is irrelevant because he doesn't have the credentials to back it. But he does have the credentials to back it. He's a father, that is his credential. I mean, that's his credential.
But even if you're not a parent, you're not allowed to make an opinion based on because honestly, if you're a pro-vaccine, that's what they've done. How many people that are pro-vaccine have read studies, have done research? Who even know what a package insert is? I remember I'm getting into an argument with this guy, and he kept putting up links from Wikipedia and the CDC. I'm like, you don't even know, they have so many conflicts of interest with the pharmaceutical companies. Those aren't credible sources. I didn't tell him that, but, I just posted my links, and I had to leave, because I felt like nothing I posted was going to be good enough for him anyway, just because I disagreed with his paradigm. So, even if I told him I was a doctor, he would be like, oh, well, you're debunked, or you're incredible, or whatever. Exactly. It's like there's people that just they want to argue, they don't want to listen, they're hard-headed, and I think a lot of it has to do with they don't want to be wrong. Most of us had to admit that we were wrong about. It's not the worst thing in the world. It really isn't. It hurts a little bit, and but it's not the worst thing in the world. And sometimes it can be a very good thing,
Right, it's true, and it can be difficult to admit when you're wrong. And I've had those feelings before, or that I don't understand something, or people are talking, and I don't necessarily, I'm not really following it, And I've had those moments where I've been like, oh, I'm embarrassed to say I don't get it, Because a lot of times I think it's over people's heads, and they just don't even. And they just don't even understand what you're saying, and so they don't want to admit that, so they just kind of write you off. But then you can tell by their responses that they actually really don't even know what you're talking about, because maybe it never even crossed their mind to conceive that there was even such a thing as a vaccine insert. They might not even, it wouldn't matter that they didn't read it, so they don't even know when such a thing exists. Like, well, this is the thing you take, and da-da-da. It's like, that's just how much we've been brainwashed to just blindly do everything that we're told to do, like with good little obedient citizens, that we don't even, wonder where's the information about what this thing is? Where's it? We just go for it. And, like you said, anyone can, our credential is whatever it is that motivates us to do the research. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he, as a dad, said that motivated him to do the research. So that's a valid credential as far as I'm concerned, because he's done hundreds of hours of research versus most doctors and most people who have the degree. They might have gone to medical school. They might have spent several hundreds of hours working on, but they're learning. They're not focusing on. I
would say thousands of hours, but but learning the wrong thing, basically.
Right, they're spending thousands of hours, I'm sure. And then just working as an intern and doing all of that. But are they actually learning what a vaccine is. Are they just learning how to administer them? You know, they're just getting the official story.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. You know, just kind of like how we did when we were in school. We got the official story of history or the official story of, you know, any of these things, and weren't really taught that there was another side of it, that there was another point of view, or that maybe there was, you know, an alternative version. We just get the general story.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens in medical school, you know. So they don't know. They don't know anything.
Oh, no, I was talking to a lady not too long ago, and I was like, you know, there's no, like, consensus on a lot of scientific or medical issues. And she was like, yes, there is. And I was like, no, there's not. Like, but she was, like, shocked to even think that, you know, doctors and scientists can have opposing viewpoints on something. And I think, you know, in society there's this idea that science is a safe space. And it's like, it's safe because everybody agrees on the same thing, and this is the thing that's going to bring us together, and because, you know, there's no refuting it because it's truth. And that, you know, they think science is truth. That's the thing. I think that's where their distinction, the distinction, or it gets collapsed. Like, science gets collapsed with truth. And science is not truth. Science can be truth. Science can be used to prove something is true, but it's not truth. Right? Because people take their data and their experiments, and then after that, they still have to interpret them. So then there's still subjectivity in their displaying of their information, because people skew data, or they just see something a completely different way, you know, than somebody else does.
Right.
I mean, as we know, the thing that makes the vaccine issue so just twisted is all the conflict of interest between the FDA, the CDC, and the pharmaceutical industries. You know, that makes getting really unbiased information from them impossible. You know, and I would urge people too, when if you're listening to this and you're kind of on the fence, you want to ask yourself, who benefits? We don't, you know, because we can't even, like, vaccine injured parents can't even, or vaccine injured parents, but, you know, people that have been vaccine injured or have a son or daughter that's been vaccine injured, they can't even sue the pharmaceutical industries. They get complete immunity from, if their products work so well and they're so safe and effective, like they're telling us, how come they get complete and utter immunity from being sued? Right? Yeah,
because they need it. Because if they didn't, they would be out of business. And that's the true story.
Yeah.
It's not even. I'm not even just making a funny. It's actually that's what happened.
Yeah.
Because that's how Reagan signed that into law when he signed the executive order to. And it's like kind of ironic. It's like to immunize them from liability. Yeah. But it kind of ironic use of words, right? Yeah. But anyway, the pharmaceutical companies are immune from being sued for vaccine injury because there were so many vaccine injuries that it threatened to shut the program down. So that's what's funny about it. It's like so they know. It's like it's not even a secret. It's like we know that it's a problem, but at that time there weren't that many vaccines, and so obviously there were fewer injuries. Yeah. And then they just increase it, and they increase the number of injuries. It's not complicated. It's just simple math, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, so on the other side, what do people that are speaking out against vaccination get? We get called names, we get abused, we get stalked, we get humiliated. You don't get money. Shit.
I wish. Yeah. Like, that'd make life a lot easier.
I know, right? Like, we're in this for the money, you know? And that's some of the, when you get called names and stuff, that's some of the things that people say, that you were in a cult. Like,
right.
Like, what? Some of it is hurtful. I think it's more hurtful when you first start, because I wasn't expecting, you know, a lot of the stuff. And then when you actually grow a thick skin, and then you have to have a sense of humor, you know, about it, because then a lot of it's like really, really ridiculous. And then you start to feel sorry for the people, because you're just like, wow, they don't even know. They're putting themselves in danger. You know, some people, I think they do know.
Right.
But I think a lot of people don't. And I guess the ones we're trying to persuade are the ones that are just kind of on the fence. Or not even, I don't like to say persuade, I'll say inform. Inform are the ones that are on the fence. Because, you know, we have the we have the confidence that they can make up their minds themselves. And I think that's something that's very telling is when you look at mainstream media and you see a lot of news anchors or reporters, and they'll say stuff like, oh, well, there's absolutely been no evidence, that vaccines hurt people and vaccines are completely safe and effective. They'll say things like there's no evidence. And we're like, what are you talking about? Yes, there is, Or,
so absurd.
Yeah, or they'll say, oh, well, that doctor, they may have a good presentation, but they've been debunked. They'll attack them personally.
Yeah, I know. Right, and going back to that the links thing and not using references or citations, I mean, that's another reason is because no matter what you refer to, they're going to find a way on the other side of it to try and say that those people aren't credible. I mean, it just doesn't even matter. You can put doctors up, you can put PubMed articles, everything. For some reason, your information is invalid while theirs is valid, according to the pro-vaxxer argument. That's just how it is. They just never, ever, ever, ever believe in it. So, I mean, and maybe they think the same of us. Maybe we just don't believe any of their stuff. But
we've read a lot of their stuff. Right?
I have read their stuff.
So it's not like, I don't, like, from the pro-vaccine side, I don't really, I mean, it's maybe a new article just telling us, saying how evil anti-vaccine people are. But it's like just another article, but it's not anything new as far as medical references or anything that's going on, within, like, clinical research studies or, the vaccine inserts, anything that really matters, Like somebody sent me a long time ago, they put up that Penn and Teller thing. Have you seen that? They're throwing the bowling balls against you. I'm like, you guys are retarded. Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I guess, but maybe, in the heart of hearts, they think they're doing the right thing. But I just think, I laugh at that video, and I'm like, they don't even know what they're talking about. It's ridiculous. It's not even based on scientific fact. It's just theory, and it's wrong. And if you look into it, you can easily refute that,
Yeah.
So, or when people say something about like my favorite is like when they say Andrew Wakefield, like he said that he was against vaccines, and like he didn't even say that. Like you didn't read, like he just wanted to split the MMR up into two different vaccines. He didn't, he never said he was anti-vaccination. Although I wonder how he feels about that now. Maybe. I wonder if he's changed his views on that. But
if you've seen some of the interviews, like that when all this was coming out in the public, and he went on the mainstream media circuits, and he was Matt Lauer was one of the people that interviewed him. There's the other guy, the Stephanopoulos guy, George Stephanopoulos. And I remember one of them, I think it was Lauer, who said that, oh, do you vaccinate your own children? And he goes, well, and he acted like, oh, I'm going to snare him, I'm going to, like, get him. He's asking Dr. Wakefield, and he's like, well, I did until I did the research, and now I don't. It's like, I mean, I thought it was good, and then I found these problems with it, and then I stopped. And so...
But doesn't Matt Lauer not vaccinate his own children?
Well, I don't exactly know. What I do know is that I don't know what his personal stance on it, but his ex-wife, he actually has an autistic son, or a stepson or something. His ex-wife, does. I don't know if it's his son biologically or if they were just, but he, according to her, she was vaccine damaged. And he said that for his own kids, he used an alternative schedule. He didn't necessarily use the vaccine schedule. That's the truth about him. So, I mean...
Well, he knows something is up,
Exactly. Why use an alternative schedule then? Like,
Well, Dr. Oz definitely doesn't vaccinate his children. He said that. But I'm amazed to see, like, the response when you say that, even though he's caught on tape saying, my wife doesn't vaccinate our kids. People still are like, well, he says his wife says he's... I'm like, are you kidding me? But they're his children, too. So if it's so important, he's promoting and telling everybody that they need to get vaccinated and how important... Why aren't you having your own kids vaccinated? Then he should step in and, like, do something. Or they would probably be on the brink of divorce if it was, if she didn't want to have them vaccinated and he, like, they still probably wouldn't be married if it was, like, such a big issue and he thought that they should be and he, she doesn't, you know?
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? That's just mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah. The level of hypocrisy.
Yeah. Well, I can see if he was like, you know, they didn't have kids and she didn't get vaccinated, but he did. That's different. But it's their children.
Right.
So it's just a whole nother level to the game, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's their children. So obviously, I mean, if he listens to her, you know, and he's the doctor, I mean, she must have a valid argument, right? Yeah. Otherwise, like you said, they'd be divorced or something. They'd be fighting about it. But instead, she wins.
Yeah.
But you're the doctor, Dr. Oz. You know. Yeah. It was like, interesting story. So I don't know. I mean, the propaganda out there. We brought it up a little bit when we were with Matt talking about this whole measles thing, this whole measles debacle. And before that, there was Ebola, you know, and there's no vaccine yet for Ebola, although they were like trying to expedite the Ebola vaccine. I mean, it's just insanity. And then that whole thing just kind of disappeared. Now there's no talk about Ebola anymore. And what was it before that? It seems like there was something right before that. There was like,
oh yeah, because there's always some kind of like scare within the last few, like it was like,
oh god,
some kind of, it was Ebola, it was something else. Was it measles again?
We had whooping cough.
Whooping cough, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's what prompted California to bring back the booster shot, because before there was a booster that was voluntary, and then they decided to make it mandatory.
In the interview, talking about how people, there was a study done where they found that people who can create antibodies, you know, were able to still recover from the measles just as fast as people that could create antibodies. So, I mean, it's not really valid. You know, it's all twisted. It's not valid. Like what they consider efficacy, basically. It's all twisted.
Yeah, I know, right? Because it doesn't mean you get it. I saw something recently that said a lot of what is being uncovered is that people that have that catch the measles actually have a vitamin A deficiency. So vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin that helps fight the measles.
Yeah. And
so if you don't have an adequate amount, you're going to actually be more susceptible to contracting the measles.
Well, they know this because I know that in certain like third world countries where they're giving them measles vaccines, people were having serious reactions, and they gave them vitamin A before they even gave them the shot, because they knew that their body would be able to fight it off more. And then that's also what they do to treat people that have measles complications. They give them vitamin A. And they also found out that measles, people that were high, their bodies were high in vitamin A, did not get the get measles or at least get complications from it, you know?
Exactly. Right, so it's just one of these things, but I find it empowering too, like we talked about, how you do you're not as afraid of these diseases. I remember when I was a kid and I would hear stories about diseases, or maybe even my early 20s, whenever that was that SARS thing came out, I remember being really scared of that. I remember being really scared of Ebola when I first heard of it. Yeah. And then this more recent thing, I was like, whatever, you know, I didn't care. I didn't even blink an eye. I was like, first of all, I don't even know if I believe it, because they always make a big fuss over these diseases, you know, and then they say nothing about all the vaccine injuries. So it's where it's like you kind of got to realize that the media their bread and butter is the pharmaceutical industry. They have tons of pharmaceutical commercials. And so, they don't really want to, you know, bite the hand that feeds them. So they don't report on any of that stuff. Oh, and it might be even deeper than that, but that's at least true. We know at least that much for sure, that they're paid for by the pharmaceutical companies. It's obvious, you know, otherwise half their commercials wouldn't be pharmaceutical companies, like, you know, Bayer, aspirin, Tylenol, blah, 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 right? It goes on and on and on. Plus,
the disease of the
drugs,
like restless leg syndrome, like they'll have that, and then like up to 9 to 12 months later, they'll have a recall because it was making people grow like tree branches out of their neck or something. You know, like Risperdal. Now, what is that recall in Risperdal that's making boys grow breasts?
Yeah, exactly.
I would be livid. Oh,
yeah. And then we were talking about the media and how they're owned by these companies that sell these products. And, you know, you see them and they want to sell you these birth control pills, or they want to sell you for the restless leg syndrome, the disease of the week, all these new modern diseases. And it is getting really, really bizarre. I don't really know. Like Matt was saying, you know, is the end in sight? I don't know. It seems there's hundreds and hundreds of vaccines currently in development. Are people going to fall for them? Are people going to fall for vaccines to stop you from becoming addicted to smoking? Are they going to stop you from becoming addicted to alcohol? You know, they're just bizarre things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think people are really starting to wake up, and I think I look at a lot of these I'm like videos, that's what they're called, videos on YouTube, and I see that they have a lot of views, and the number of likes or dislikes are disproportionate to a lot of the people that are viewing, if that makes sense. So, like, I'll see a video that's talking, you know, has, like, anti-vax issues that has maybe 18,000 views and, like, 200 likes and maybe, like, 30 dislikes. Or I'll see something pro-vax that's kind of like the opposite. So I think that there are people that are watching that are kind of in the middle. And as I said in the interview, you know, the people that are in the middle are the ones that we're really trying to, you know, inform, because they're misinformed. And I think a lot of people are also seeing how you get treated when you step out and you speak out on stuff, so they're scared. Right. You know, and I've even had people write me personally and say, "Oh, thanks for, you know, like, your information. It's really helpful." Or I went on a forum that somebody was like, "Oh, I love this." Somebody made a response to that comic that came out a few months ago. It was a pro-vaccine comic, but somebody did an infographic in response to that. So I was reading the comments on it, and somebody was saying that that, you know, they were really grateful for the infographic, and that they have the same views, but they're afraid to actually post stuff on their page because they're afraid of, like, they know how they're going to be treated basically by their friends and family, you know? Yeah. Which sucks. I mean, I hope that person actually gets enough courage to, you know, take a stand and own the information that she knows and is honest about informing people. And, you know, like Matt said, you might lose some friends, but they might come back around too. I mean, not that, you know, maybe who knows if his friend might come back around, you know? It's,
yeah, so that, I don't know. So I liked his stuff a lot. I think you sent me his article, and I was just kind of blown away, because we're both writers, and I think we come across, you know, it's rare when you come across, I mean, there's a lot of people on our show that write blogs and stuff, but that you write somebody who's like a real writer, you know, you enjoy reading their stuff, and you're like, this guy's funny, and he hits the points really well, and he's not, you know, and you can tell he knows what he's talking about. He's really well researched, but he's not bombarding you with that. He's just kind of like going very matter of fact through it, and so I really enjoyed reading that particular article that we mentioned several times, and then that led me to read his other stuff on his page, which is also very good. So I think we talked a little bit about the one he wrote about the letter to Paul Offit, a rebuttal to Offit.
It was great too.
Oh, it's great.
It's great. Yeah. It's really refreshing to read something that's factual, but also, like, that can make you laugh at the same time. And I did send that to you. I don't remember who sent it to me. I think it was Lily, a lady named Lily. So if it was Lily, if it wasn't Lily, or if you listen to this, please let me know who you are. So I'm thinking you right now, but I think it was Lily. Sent that to me.
Yeah.
Because somebody sent it to me for sure, but I was like, I have to send this to April. It's so, like, spot on, you know?
It was perfect. I mean, I never thought that someone could articulate it so perfectly, because it's just, he talks about all the 15 things, and it's like, it's true. Everything that he said is true. You know, you start off on it, you get off of the fence, you stop being in the middle about it, because you realize there is no middle ground, really. And then you stop, you know, you stop believing, you start despising the mainstream media, you start fearing disease. It's like, oh, that was accurate. I was like, wow, that's really well done. And so I'm glad we were able to get him and find him and bring him on the show, because he doesn't have contact info on his page. And I imagine it would have been kind of overwhelming. You know, you have 2 blogs on you start a blog, you have 2 posts, and by your second post, now he's up to over 600 comments. Jeez.
And then you know how just really mean-spirited and psychos some of the trolls can be too, you know?
Oh, totally. Some of it's very, yeah. And they will come after you and say mean and hurtful things, and they try to dismiss you because you don't have credentials. But even if you did, it wouldn't matter. And it really doesn't. And even, as myself, as somebody who experienced watching my son have a vaccine injury, they'll sit there and tell me, no, but vaccines don't cause autism. Well, what? Didn't I just tell you? Didn't you just read what I wrote? Like, you didn't. I just told you that it did.
Yeah.
And so it's just.
Oh, but you're a pseudoscientist. You're pseudoscientist. You're an occult. You're all the 1,000 names they want to call you.
Oh,
Instead
right,
of listening
exactly.
to you. That's just so bizarre.
Because they tune it out before they even read the story, and so they've already made up their mind before they've even read what you had to say. And so that's what it takes. You have to have an open mind and not make up your mind before you actually read the material. And then read it and then make a decision. You might even go in with a bias, but at least give it the courtesy to read it.
Yeah.
And to actually, without being closed off to it, because they'll just read it and be like, the whole time, right? That didn't happen. She might think that's right.
She might think that's what happened, but that's not what really happened because she doesn't know what science means.
Right. It's like, well, were you there? Like, no, you weren't. So you don't know what you're talking about. So it's just, it's right. It's almost like laughable. And you do develop, I think one of the points that he makes is that you become a hardened person. And I don't think he means that you become cynical and that you don't care or want to help people, but you kind of become hardened or immune to some of these attacks.
Yeah, you get a thick skin, basically, which is actually a good thing. I mean, it's going to help you in other areas of your life, too, not just with the situation.
Right.
So it's definitely, I've grown as a person. And it's,
you get to own your own opinions and feel confident in them and say, this is it. And, the more research that you do, the more you feel that, too, because it's really the science is on our side. And that's what he says. And the other point he makes is you're not really anti-science if you're an anti-vaxxer.
you're anti-science.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And that's what I hear from people, too, when you tell them that you don't believe that vaccinations work, and they're like, well, I believe in science. I'm like, well, me too. Well, not even I believe in it. I know that the science backs it up. I even like the word. I don't even like that phrase, believing in science, because it makes it a religion, and that's for what a lot of people. It's become a religion.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be a tool to help you understand and assess things. Really, that's what it's supposed to be. So there are different types of sciences depending on the field of study, that you are approaching. But, it's not even like they think it's like this thing that's like all knowing and all telling, and they kind of it's like it becomes a religion, like a god.
Exactly. Yeah, it replaces God for some
scientism.
people.
Yeah, it does.
Scientism.
I came across this article. It's called "The Dish," and the caption under the magazine, it says "balanced and unbiased." I'm like, anytime I see that, I'm like, oh God,
Right.
I mean, in my experience, maybe I could be wrong with my experience, but I've always seen like, oh, it's science-based or it's balanced and unbiased. It seems like they're just kind of putting that extra like oomph out there to make, kind of throwing the credentialism or the, not credential, you know what I mean? Like just trying to build it up to more than it is, because they really don't know. Well, they'll feel they need to know more than they are. But it's funny. So it's, and the name of the article, it was reviewing a book, and the name of the article was called "Treating the Anti-Vaccine Movement with Kindness." Really? But then all through the article, they're basically saying that, I'm going to take a quote that says, vaccinating children should not be up for debate. So to read an elegant, incisive book that takes the debate seriously is bound to be an ambivalent experience. This is a book fair to both sides of a debate that among people who know the evidence does not exist. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
There's no evidence. Yeah, whatever, dude.
Where did you find that again?
I'll send it to you.
It's called The Dish? No, I just went for the audience.
Oh, it's called, the name of the blog, it's called The Dish, and the name of the article, it's called Treating the Anti-Vaccine Movement with Kindness. Even before I came to my decision, I made, I would look at a lot of pro-vax stuff, and I looked at a lecture from Paul Offit, our favorite guy, and next to Bill Gates, and it was called like communicating vaccine science to the public. So I'm like, oh cool, like I hope this guy's gonna like tell me about some vaccine science from the pro-vax science, and maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe there's something that some information they have that I'm missing. And it basically was a whole lecture of him just dogging people that were anti-vaccine. He didn't talk about science, vaccine science one bit. It was 59 minutes. I remember because I remember thinking, wow, I wasted 59 minutes of my life watching this video that basically just degraded, my opinion because I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time here, and we want to thank Matt for being on our show today, Matt Jonker. You can find his blog at dinnerforthought.com.